for today's video, it might be a short one. I don't know how much I can have to say about this topic, and I'm not even sure what to call it. But I just want to tell you that police officers deal with some of the stupidest, not just some of the stupidest, but like sometimes my entire day is spent dealing with the dumbest people on earth. And it wears me out. It wears everybody out. And this might be one of the reasons that when you have a run-in with a police officer, he might not be the most patient or courteous person that you've ever run into. And I don't know. I just want to tell you a story about a run I had yesterday that was one of these people. So I responded to a traffic crash. And this particular traffic crash happened because there was a pickup truck driving southbound on a one-way street, and this was in a residential neighborhood. He was driving southbound in a one-way street, had the right-of-way. There was a maroon car, which from this point on I'm going to call moron car. This moron car was driving westbound on a cross street. They come up to a stop sign at this cross street. They stopped. They said that they looked both ways. Then they pulled into the roadway, and they ended up getting hit by the vehicle that was driving southbound. The vehicle that was driving southbound didn't have a stop sign, didn't have a yield sign, didn't have anything. They were just driving southbound. I pulled up to the crash, and just by the way, the direction I came in from, first person I talked to was the guy who was driving southbound on the road. I asked him what happened, and he just told me I was just driving south. That car pulled out in front of me, and I hit them. Okay, that makes sense. So I told him to go and grab his license, insurance, and registration. I'll be back with him in just a moment. And I went over to talk to the other driver. I talked to this other driver, and she's yelling and screaming that this is not her fault. That was kind of what's coming out of her mouth right from the jump. And I'm asking her, like, so tell me what happened. She says, well, I was driving this way. I pulled up to the stop sign, and I stopped like I'm supposed to. And then when I went in the road, this MFer hit me. And I was like, okay, well, you pulled out in front of him. She goes, no, I didn't. I stopped. It's like, I realize that you stopped, but you have to make sure there's no cars coming before you can go. Like, that's the other half of this equation. I definitely didn't say that, but I was very nice to her. And then she just started screaming, I don't want to hear any of your bullshit. You're just going to take his side anyway. There was a little bit of a racial component to this argument. And I was just like, I was flabbergasted. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, this is going to be one of those situations. So I asked her for her driver's license. She didn't have it. It was on the way with her husband. I asked her for her name. She gives me a name that is commonly spelled with a C, but hers was spelled with a K. So she had to say, this is my name with a K. I was like, all right, moron with a K. Does the car register to you? She said it did, so I wrote down the license plate knowing that I would have her information. Asked for her insurance and her phone number. She says, I ain't got no phone. It's like, okay, I'll be back in a moment. So I went to the other driver. He had his information ready for me. I copied it down. Went to my cruiser, verified all that information, got the report number for the victim of the crash, delivered it to him, and then I told him he could leave the scene. Went back over to this the person in the moron car and tried to talk to her again, which she was refusing to cooperate with me. Her husband had shown up. So I took her husband, I was like, and she was on the phone screaming at somebody. So I said, hey, sir, why don't you come here? I want to show you something. So I walked him over to where the stop sign was. I said, hey, man, look, your wife pulled up to the stop sign. She stopped like she's supposed to. Unfortunately, there was a car heading southbound, and she entered the roadway without making sure it was clear, and she got hit by this truck as it went southbound. As I'm explaining that to her, this woman shows back up again. She's pointing at the sign, yelling, screaming that she stopped and that I'm an idiot and that I'm refusing to listen to her. I hear her say, I've got my insurance right here. She points at her phone. And then I hear her, she's talking to the dispatcher. She called back in and was demanding that a new police officer be dispatched out there because I was rude and I wasn't listening to her and I wasn't properly investigating this crash and that she was demanding a new officer. Which, when I realized that was going on, I believe I turned to her and I said, "You're not getting a new police officer. That's not how this works. This isn't Burger King where you can just have it your way." Which is, I use that line as often as I can. For those of you that might be old enough to remember, McDonald's didn't allow you to specialize your burgers, but Burger King did. That was like their big selling point. And when I was in basic training, I had to hear that line quite a bit. It was quite hilarious. This woman turned an accident that could have been a simple exchange of information, and she could have just walked away. She turned it into a situation where I was forced to take a report and issue her a citation, simply because she would not accept responsibility for what she did. And she was trying to blame everybody else for her mistake. And the thing that she kept saying, she's like, "Yeah, I stopped like I was supposed to, but he just kept on coming. He's supposed to stop." I was like, "No, he doesn't have a stop sign. He has no responsibility to yield to you whatsoever." And she then told me that as she was pulling out, her daughter started screaming that there was a car coming, but she thought she was completely okay because that car had a responsibility to stop once she entered the intersection. There was absolutely no explaining anything to her, so I ended up issuing her citation, letting her know when the court date was, and I did not get a signature on that citation, which a lot of people think that's an automatic you go to jail. That's not true. A lot of crimes you can be taken to jail, not you will be taken to jail. Any place that has that as a policy, that is a policy, and any place that has that as a law, that should be challenged because that's a dumb law. But regardless of the fact, I guess technically I could have arrested her for it, but I didn't. I already had enough problems. And then in a situation like that where you're dealing with someone in a moron car and you place someone under arrest, you're going to be stuck listening to that moron scream for the next 2 or 3 hours, and I didn't want to do that. But I just wanted to tell you the story about how I spend the majority of my time throughout my day talking to some of the dumbest people that I've ever spoken to in my entire life. That is a contributing factor into my mood and how I'm going to react with the next person that I encounter. So if you encounter me on the street and either you say something like, when I walk into the gas station, you say, "I didn't do it," and I don't appear to be amused, or whatever, if you call for some simple problem and I show up and I don't seem to be very committed to solving your simple problem that you probably should have solved on your own without calling the police, just remember that 90% of my time is spent dealing with the dumbest people I've ever met in my life. That's all I got to say today. I'll talk to you later.